So let's get this started. My name is Christy Thompson, and I am with BIS. And we just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be talking about about Cybersecurity 101, back to the basics. Just a few housekeeping items. We are going to hold questions to the end. We'll open them up. Feel free to put them into the chat. We'll try to take them as we're doing the presentation, but we'll definitely get them answered at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to our host, Phillip Long. Phillip is a technologist and entrepreneur. He specializes in providing technology solutions and security consulting to businesses along the Gulf Coast. He's been in the IT industry for over 20 years. He has 600 plus clients from Gulfport to Dothan and now all the way up to Montgomery. He's the current owner of 5 businesses, and he also holds two certifications. He's a certified information system security professional, so CISSP, and a CMMC designation as well. So I am going to turn this over to Phillip.
Right. Thank you, Christy, and thank everybody for joining. And we decided to do this because, as far as this particular topic about kind of back to the basics, for a couple of reasons. And one of the main reasons is that the bad actors, the criminals, are absolutely still kicking our butts. And and one of the things, and we'll talk about it more during the presentation, is there's a particular compliance model that I am following for like basics, and I can share with you after. Anybody can direct message me. I'd be happy to talk to you even afterwards about it. But I think it's really important that that we stick to models, and this particular model that we're going to be kind of focusing around, where a lot of the strategy is coming from, is called the CIS 18. It's the Center for Internet Security. If you're watching any of my other channels, I talk about it a lot. It's really a very practical organization, and it is something that there's 18 controls or 18 things that every business should be doing, let's say, but if you do the top 6, it reduces your risk by 85%. And what I like about it, honestly, is I like to check myself. I think everybody needs to have a level of being checked by somebody, and using an industry standard like that that's been around for 20 plus years, it's really a great way to have a model that you can follow, that where you're really getting the most bang for your client's buck. It helps me sleep well at night. It also helps me keep abreast of things, and it's something that actually business owners can do. So what we're going to talk about today are things, in my professional opinion, and I'm going to be a little blunt in some areas. I'm going to try to be, which I like to be able to speak from a platform like this, because sometimes you don't want to, maybe confront somebody, or it may seem confrontational if you're kneecap to kneecap. But in this environment, I can kind of speak a little more openly and broadly, because I'm speaking based off my conviction and off what I've understanding from this industry, of things that you should do. So what we're going to talk about today are not things that you should do. These are things that you must do. And I recommend take out a notepad, because I don't like to bullet point the hell out of everything. I want to have a conversation. And also, I've got my chat up. I'm going to try to respond to questionnaires, because it's just me on the presentation. So I will answer questions as we move along. So I want to start with a quick poll question here about, I want to just kind of gauge the concern, if you will, in the marketplace, for how concerned are you about cyber attacks. And I'm just curious to kind of, just check the market, check the pulse on things of people. And, yes, I'm concerned. No, not really. Let it be there just a couple minutes. Won't belabor it. All right. So we'll share the results there. And ultimately, 71% are concerned, and 29% I quite frankly don't know what the heck's wrong with you, because I think I am concerned. And I am very concerned for my own company. I'm concerned for every company I work for. I'm concerned for my children. I'm concerned for everybody and anybody, because the bad guys are absolutely at this point still greatly winning the battle. And I'd be curious, and y'all can drop it in chat. I want to pose a question of why. I'm gonna go over just some tidbits on the current cyber threat landscape, and why do you think that these things are true? This is one quick fact. In the past year, 54%, that's over half of organization, faced a cyber attack, and 52% noting that they've actually seen an increase from the previous year. So we're half the people had some type of what they would call a cyber attack, and then 52% said yeah, and it's more often than before. An incident response, and that would be basically how you respond to an incident. And always an important fact I like to point out is that whenever we're talking about incidents and breaches, anytime we talk about, especially early on and when something happens, you always want to refer to it as a security incident, not a security breach, because security incidents, basically there's no harm, no foul in the effect of data being lost, where a security breach would mean security data was lost, which is a world of difference when it comes to cybersecurity claims, who you have to report to, and all these other things, and just the overall what's going on. A security breach is much more serious than a security incident, and if you don't know which one they are until the investigation comes out, always refer to it as a security incident. But 56% of people in the US don't know the necessary actions to take place in the event of a data breach. And that would look like this. Let's say that something happens within your organization with one of your users. Who would they report it to? Most companies, if you walk around the floor and just ask people, when something happens, what do you do? You'll get a plethora of answers. And if you have a culture that's not cohesive to cybersecurity, or they don't have an understanding, a lot of times people won't say anything, which could really be damaging. Because another stat is, I think that the cyber criminals are living on our network, stealing data for an average of, let's just say, 2 months before they're actually discovered. So employee with the right type of incident response, knowing who to contact about what, and the culture being conducive to saying, hey, I clicked on this and this happened, and I don't know if it's bad or good, but somebody needs to look into it, could really be the difference between a security incident and a security breach. Zero trust, and this is a little technical. I'm not going to get extremely technical, but back in the day, it would be like this. It would be where, like, if you got into the let's just use, I'm a go to football games, college football games. Like, when I go there, once I pass security, I'm considered trusted, right? I don't get checked anymore when I'm inside the stadium. Well, that is kind of the old school way of the way that cybersecurity was held. Now, systems, softwares, most of them have the ability, if you set it up correctly, where they're being checked as they talk to each other. Packets coming in and out of the firewall are actually being confirmed with the workstation that is sending and receiving. Let's say, all types of devices have authentication that is being required. They're not just necessarily trusted because they're on the inside of the network. And that is crucial, because if you deployed this correctly, you're going to reduce your data breach by an average of 43%, because it's going to limit the ability for a bad actor to get on the network and have access to the full network. That's really a bigger conversation, but I want that concept to resonate with you. And of course, it becomes more and more difficult as we have people working from multiple offices or working from home or working from hotel rooms and things like that, because our footprint and our spread, if you will, of data gets broader and broader and broader. This is the part that really, when I read this statistic back in 2022, it really concerned me. And this was the cost of cybercrime, and it was $8.4 trillion. That's T with a trillion. I really and truly, I'm just now getting to where I feel comfortable with billion, and a trillion is a lot of money. And if that number 8.4 trillion was a world economy, it would be US, China, and then cybercrime right up there in the top three. So there is an enormous amount of money that is being made by some bad actors. And the scarier part is that their estimation of in 2027, 5 short years, it's going to triple and be over $24 trillion. So the ride isn't over. And I want to just really emphasize that, because I think a lot of times, and I'm going to go into it a little bit deeper, is that as business owners, we don't take that risk as seriously as we might. Although, if you were really to look at somebody's financial statement, most likely their strongest asset or their biggest asset for a small business owner is going to be their company. And if I were to give them, 100 grand or 200 grand or whatever and say, hey, go invest this where you could get the maximum potential return, it would most likely be in their business that they are currently running. And I think we lose focus on that, because again, we get caught up in the day to day, and this is like a different language and all that that people don't like. Um, I want to go over a couple of common mistakes that every owner slash manager is making in their business. And again, I'll open up for questions. I'll keep my eye on the web chat. If you guys drop something in there you want to get answered as we go through these, I very well could have missed some. These are the ones that I personally see. One is really not giving their employees what they need to do their job. There's been some studies out, especially this is back with millennials, that I recall the studies, and they talked about most millennials having better technology at their house than they do at the office, and that really they link that to some of the, whenever back a year or so ago, whenever we had everybody basically quitting. I forget I forget even the term they used, but basically the everyone was just not wanting to work. Everybody was just not working. Some of it had to do with the fact that the technology was older. They didn't feel like they had what they needed, and sometimes they can't. Your employees can't even articulate how that makes them feel, but they did studies, and basically it means that you don't love them, you don't care about them, you don't give them the things they need. And a couple of items that really, from a security perspective, that I see happen is, say you've got an employee and they work on the road, or they work in the field, or they work from home, and they don't have the ability to share documents, or they need documents from within the office in order to gain access, or they need access to their computer. And if your network's not configured right, they could literally put like Dropbox, a personal Dropbox account on their computer, and they could simply upload files to their personal Dropbox so they could have access to them at home. Or they could load a form of like a team viewer or some type of product that allows them to remote into their computer from home, and all of which the business owner doesn't even know that this is going on. They don't know how it's set up. They don't know, the password even. Let's just say that the employee has the best of intentions, but they don't know much about security. And now they're going to allow remote access with a inexpensive team viewer product that you literally could download off of 1,000 websites, and not from the actual team viewer site itself. And they inject back doors in that install so that bad actors can now have access, because they just went out and, oh, team viewer, my buddy said I could use that. They'll go download it, and the actual download will be not a legitimate, it'll work, but it's not it's a product that is not the way the manufacturer intended. It's been altered, and now it opens up as a back door into your network. So not giving your employees what they need to do their job. So how would we fix that? Well, quite frankly, you really just need to have a frank conversation with your employees about, hey, have you got everything you need? How are you accessing this? Think through their job for them so that you know that you're not actually shorting them on things that they need. Another one is like letting them work from home without the proper protections. If you're sharing resources from home and they're using their personal computer that their kid plays games on, that's on a network that you have no control over, you have no idea what's going on. And people think, well, and I've heard it from business owners over and over. Well, all they're doing is this. Well, I understand, but they have now gained access into your network. Um, just one other side note on this, even with wireless, like your wireless inside the office, I see business owners constantly giving their employees like you could set up your wireless where it has a public, where like anybody could come in and join the wireless to access the internet, and that access should really just go straight to the internet. It should not have access to the business network. But I see business owners, they may even have that set up right, but then they'll give their employees access with their cell phone or their personal laptop or tablet to the business network. And that's very dangerous because you have no controls over their cell phone. And they could very much be infected, and could bring that infection right into your business network. And what makes that even worse is they don't really need anything on the business network. They don't need access to files. They don't need access to printing or anything. They would do much better just to be on the public side, so they have access to the internet. Say maybe their cell signal isn't the greatest inside the office, so they want to connect to the wireless. Great. Put them on the public side so they only have access. But ultimately, letting people work from home or hotel rooms, and not looking at how that's set up and not putting the proper countermeasures in place really opens you up to things that it's almost like too many things to list of the possibilities that get opened up. Whereas if you set it up correctly, you can really limit, again, shrink that space of risk. Number three is not training people. I had a call this morning with someone, and they were talking about their main level of defense on their email is uh, basically the end user not knowing what to and what not to click on. And we use a pretty cool product that I like, that it does a security score of the employee based off some factors: how many times they've had their accounts breached, how they scored on their training scores, whether they do any type of additional training, and how many times we caught them in a simulated phishing attack. So it kind of gives you a risk, a number associated with an individual, so that you kind of know their tendencies on how vulnerable, or how, maybe naive or whatever they are. Because if you're really primarily using just their knowledge and their um, acumen on determining whether something's secure or not, you're really going to wind up in a bad position. You will be one of those 54% that get hacked this year. So Training's cheap. They say it's absolutely the most cost-effective way. Most business owners are just too damn busy. They don't want to take the time. They don't want to set it up. They don't want to whatever, and they really leave themselves at risk over something that could be easily managed and easily maintained. Another one is not upgrading hardware and software. That is one of the biggest problems, not patching systems, not upgrading them and keeping them where they're actually not vulnerable. Another thing that can pretty easily be solved, especially like server 2012, let's say, it expired, it ended of life from Microsoft, meaning they're not going to support it anymore. And that was in October of this year. So, and we've known about that for years to come. Another one that is important to kind of put on the radar is that Windows 10, which makes up probably about 65% of the assets we manage on the desktop, are still running Windows 10. It's been a great operating system, very stable. And I'll tell you, Windows 11 has been very, very good as well. But 65% of those are out there and that I manage, and I'm having that conversation with my clients right now because in October of 2025 Windows 10 will no longer be supported. So you have to put these technology roadmaps to manage your assets and put them out in the future so that you can plan for them, because I don't know about you, but 2 years goes by pretty quick, and you just don't want to wait till the last minute because that'll cause chaos. It'll cause a lot of issues. Mistake number 5 is not implementing and enforcing company policies. I'm surprised how many businesses don't have the standard set of policies that they need to have. And it starts with a written information security policy. And these policies can be in layman's terms. They don't have to be super technical, but you need to have a policy. And from there, they kind of cascade downward. There's about 13 policies that every business should have in place. It's like an internet use policy, a workstation use policy, a sanction policy, meaning that you've outlined to them what happens if they break the policy. I've told this story before. It's pretty interesting if you've been following the things that I put out. I was on a case one time in Mississippi. Started out as it was in a medical practice, and the employee, filed a complaint saying that they were wrongfully let go from the company because they would not break HIPAA policies. Well, that didn't turn into anything that got solved, but kind of an add-on that she threw in there was that Johnny was surfing pornography on the business network, and she saw it, was offended, blah blah blah. You can go down the trail of how that works out. And so the owner, trying to represent themselves, was asked, do you have a written policy? How did Johnny know that he wasn't supposed to be doing that on the network? Well, we told him. Was it ever documented? No. Johnny, I didn't know. It's his simple. I wasn't aware that that wasn't acceptable, and they wound up with a fine against them that they had to pay to settle with this young lady for something that, of course, everyone knows that you're not supposed to be surfing pornography on the business network. But had they simply had that policy and Johnny signed, and I'll go back to those policies, of the 13, 8 of which you need to have your employees actually sign and acknowledge that they have received them. As it comes to the enforcing of these policies, of course, you want them to sign, but you also probably want to have a web filter in place so that, say, pornography couldn't be surfed on the network. And I always like to think about, policies, enforcement, security as something that really can be a non-issue in a lot of ways, because you've got the network built in such a structure where the things that aren't allowed, they're not able to do, So, and most firewalls have web filters, and you would be surprised how many people just won't take the time to set them up. and they're very effective, and there's very few false positives, meaning that sites are blocked that shouldn't be blocked. So there's really, literally in a 30 minutes worth of thinking with somebody to pick the policies that you want enforced, and an hour of deployment, you could have your network where people would actually be more productive, and issues wouldn't even be an issue. Number 6 is really trying to manage IT people when you don't know IT. And I have been doing something for a very long time. Actually, in preparation for this, I've used a behavior monitoring tool. It's called DISC, and it stands for Dominance, Influence, Steadiness, and Compliance. And if y'all probably heard of Myers-Briggs, there's a ton of things out there like this. I like this because it's a very business acumen kind of. They have other tests that I like to use, or other assessments, I should say, that I like to use. And with this, I'm going to give an example here. If you look at the graph on the right, this is going to be someone's natural style. And this is very much an engineer's profile. I've been doing this since 2006, 2005, 2006. This happens to be a guy that worked for me in 2011. So I've been doing this a really long time, and they have a natural style. That's who they would be under no pressure, under their own kind of management. And more of the adaptive style will be how they are at work. And this is a double kind of thing about understanding your people and the importance of understanding your people. I want to first talk about like the natural disposition of a tech, of an engineer. They are steady and they are compliant. The D stands for dominance. That's the first column in red. The I is influential. That's a like a social kind of a graph there that shows how social they are. The 50% line, or the power line as we call it, means that if they're there, they're going to be pretty average. They're going to be, say to talk to people, but they're not going to avoid. The standard engineer has a do not like confrontation. They do not like just casually talking in general. They're more of an introvert. They're also not dominant in the fact that they're also not dominant in the fact that they won't be assertive. I don't want to say, it's a very simple, if I were to say they're yes people, but that's a way to think about it that I could explain. They want to please people. They want to say yes. And but they're very steady, which means they don't like change. The good part is that they'll work and work and work and work. Elon Musk said something recently. He said that the problem with most engineers is that they're working on something that nobody really wants. They're prone to grind on something so hard. Like I catch our guys all the time. They're working on an asset that doesn't have any value, and we're spending an inordinate amount of time, and it's keeping the business owner from doing their day-to-day operation, let's say. And at the right thing would be is like, look, we just need to replace this computer. And yet they'll just grind and grind and grind, and they're very compliant. They'll follow the rules, but they don't like change. They're often cynical and all of that. Now, the second part of this that I think is very interesting that you could use something like this for in your business is, in this guy's role, and this is the age-old thing with IT guys. I've made it even since 2011. You put a technical person in charge of managing, in a management position. And what happens is, you see his compliance comes down, his steadiness comes down, his eye goes up, his interaction with people has to go up, his dominance goes up. But this guy is in a incredible strain because that's not who he is. And what happens is it causes a lot of stress and it causes a lot of problems. We could talk offline on that. And I do these. I've got a little company called Veritas Consulting that I work with people. If you want to kind of get to know your people on more of a behavioral standpoint, I'd be happy to help you in that area. So and then I want to show you, this would be a standard. This is actually my personal DISC profile. And this is going to be more of a CEO. And I'll tell you what's cool about like life and learning and education and things is I used to be a DI. I was very dominant and very influential, meaning I was very social, and I'm still that way. But you see, I pulled my eye down. This is a one that was done probably within the last 3 years. It's different. You can even see the way they show the graph is different. My steadiness is right at the power line, and my compliance is way up. And when you match a business owner and their way of thinking with a technical mind's way of thinking, they're in a lot of ways they do not match. The business owner is about dominance, is about getting things done. Let's make it happen. And they'll often go to the tech and be like, all right, dude, we got to bop, bop, bop. And they'll lay it out there for them. And that he doesn't like that. He doesn't like change. He doesn't like confrontation. He'll say, yes, 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 yes. And that dynamic of those two, it won't work. And I know that personally because I've been doing this 23 years and I have to be very careful. And of course, I'm in more of a leadership role. So I have to, of course, acquiesce. But the reason that a lot of times there's conflict between those two situations, and honestly, the reason why I developed the division called Cyber Fortress is to sit in that seat between the business owner. He wants results, and sometimes he doesn't understand the technical part, so he won't spend money, and the IT guy doesn't want to change, so he'll sit there and just let things run into the ground without making a change because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They're not proactive. And so you have to have somebody and you have to have some mechanism in order to make those two worlds work together. Both worlds are needed. There's not one profile better than the other profile, but understanding that is absolutely crucial to having a good outcome. All right, so let's talk about some of the things that we see out in the marketplace that are just top tier. These are the things that we have got to get right. If we don't get those right, we're gonna be whacked by 2027. I would stand by that. Something bad is going to happen. You're going to have to take care of password management. You're going to have to take care of your email security, and you're going to have to put some form of data loss prevention in place in order to be able to mitigate your risk. So let's talk about password management. I read a recent study. I think they said that the average person had 140 different accounts that required login. Well, if the standard, and this is the standard, is that you have to have a minimum of 12 characters, and it has to be complex, caps, numbers, special characters. You need to have a 90-day password rotation minimum. And you're going to, in order to pull that off, because you can't remember 140 different passwords that are complex. So what you do is you use the same one over and over, which makes you very vulnerable, because if they hack one that you use anywhere, the bad actors are or will go and start using that. Usually it's your email as your username and your password, and they'll start with your Microsoft 365, your bank accounts, 401k stuff, your financial type institutions. They'll start with social media to gain more insight about who you are, who your friends are, so they can exploit that sphere of influence. They'll want to check your email. Business email compromise is one of the very most is one of the major reasons for compromise within businesses, and it's really where all they're doing is checking your email, and they just sit on top of your email and they watch the email that comes in and out. And if they see something interesting, they may redirect that email to a folder that you don't watch, start responding on your behalf. So, having that password protected so they can't get to those accounts in the first place is very important. Deactivating users, inactive users. I can't tell you how many times I go to businesses and I look through their, like where they have accounts for people, like say where they log into the computer on the network or their email or their business software that they use, and they just never removed the person from the account. And they have the ability to work on, be able to still have access to things. But even worse than that is that if that person got their username and or their password hacked, that very well may be they're not even working from you, but they still are using that same password. And now all of a sudden they bring a lot of risk back into your company. Just really have to change your passwords. They have to be complex. The only way you're going to be able to pull it off is to do some type of password manager. Like we use LastPass. You can go to lastpass.com or 1Password. There's many of them out there. But you really are going to have to give your people what they need with a password manager. And you're going to have to require multi-factor authentication, especially, and I'll say it more about when we get to email, but especially on email and especially on accounts that have administrative rights. I'm very surprised how many people have, like when they log into the network, they're an administrator on the network and they really have no needs to be an administrator. And when we spoke earlier and we were talking about that zero trust, well, that's a violation of that, because now this particular person has an enormous capacity to touch all things on the network, meaning that if they get hacked, the bad actor has the same capabilities to touch everything, and they're logged in, they're clicking, they're working, they're just doing what they do, and it just increases your risk. So you got to take away the administrative rights from your people. And then every account has to have its unique password. And I would even say that your people, you don't need to use shared accounts. That's very dangerous from a forensic standpoint, because let's say something got stolen from the company, some documents were stolen or whatever, and it happened, but they use the same username and password, and it's amongst 10 people. Well, it's impossible to clarify which one is the bad actor. It really puts you in a bad position. Are you going to fire all 10 people? What are you going to do? How are you going to determine? So having people have a unique account is very important. Email security, I can't speak enough to this. This is a must-have. Everybody must have multi-factor authentication on their email. No questions. You need to have filters put in place on your emails. It's kind of funny. I go back and forth with people. Some people are complaining because things get blocked by the filter, and they're like, I hate that filter. And then other people, when a bit of spam comes in, they're like, oh my God, I thought you had a filter in place. And I did some math the other day. I wish I had my numbers in front of me, because I literally looked at several accounts that are, have more than 50 people, 50 email addresses. We use a Barracuda spam firewall that filters everything. And I looked at the number of total messages, and then I looked at the total number that were blocked and the total number that were allowed. And for these particular accounts, the average was about 75% of email that was coming in. And we're talking tens of thousands of emails in a month's time. And I did the math, and 75% of it is blocked as spam. So I just ran some quick numbers, and really like to have that false positive or false negative, where like something came through that was spam or something that was blocked. It was minimal. It was well underneath that 0.5%. So most filters are doing a great job, but to the end user, perfection is required, and you're never gonna win that battle. So I just thought I'd point that out. Using encryption. The thing I like about Barracuda is that I can set some rules so that any mail that leaves the mail server from the end user, the employee, if it has social security numbers, driver's license, date of birth, things that are sensitive information, it automatically encrypts it on the way out. That is beautiful. And we always set it up where you can put like an @ symbol and secure in the subject line somewhere in the body of the message, and it'll automatically send it secure, so that it's easy enough for the end user to be able to send a secure email without having to have a bunch of red tape that you got to click and put it in this form box and all that. It's really an easy way to send secure email. Also, limit forwarding outside the company. There's some rules you can put in place, and like I would say, like the number of files, and even instead of sending the file, like sending an Excel spreadsheet with all the people's 401k information, send a link that you could require to have a password, or that would link that person where they download the file, who receives it, or even you can put it to where it would expire in 7 days. Because another problem with that business email compromise, whenever people get on someone's email remotely, like they're checking it off the web, they are able to go look at all your sent items, all your received items. And people literally, I have email in my account that is literally goes back to 2001, 2002, and some of the archive folders that they would have access to. So and every document that's in there that has personal identifiable information or sensitive information in it, a bad actor could go through and mine through all of those documents. So that could be affecting people and transactions that you did 10 years ago, because they have access to your mailbox. Also, having some type of tool that is identifying the phishing emails, and the Barracuda, I think, really does a great job of that. And if you actually click on something, it'll actually take you to training so that you can be educated on that particular type of phishing. Email is by and large one of your greatest threats as a small business owner, and if you don't take these methods, you're going to wind up losing some information, or possibly having a breach from it. Another one is just typical data loss prevention. Where are your files? If you were just to sit down and say, you'd start with, where are my people? Their mobile devices. How many of them have mobile devices? How many of them work from home? How many of them have laptops? So you'd want to start there and determine, okay, what files do they have access to? Another area that I often see overlooked completely is like file shares. Like, you have a file share within the office that everybody can store files into, and the permissions are not set correctly, where the average user can get into the owner's files and have access to all of their files. It just blows me away how many times I start looking through that, and I start just really searching through there, kind of knowing what I want to look for. But again, you could put an 8th grade boy that knows a little about technology, and he'd be looking for the same things. I'm looking for payroll records. I'm looking for pictures, all kinds of things that you can look for in that share folder by running a search. And you're pulling it from all the people within the company, and you would be absolutely amazed at what I find a lot of times. And when I show it, I hear again, it's that IT guy and that owner that don't have the same type of understanding. The owner's over trusting of that IT guy. And he's like, well, he told me he had it set. Well, at the end of the day, the risk of things actually doesn't fall on the IT guy. It falls on the owners. And I think that, one of the things that we really need to keep that top of mind presence is why I even talked about, like, that's probably in your personal financial statement, your biggest means by which you're going to, obtain wealth. So we need to protect our company. Another thing would be like using consumer file grade sharing. Like, could I go on your network and go to Dropbox.com and simply just upload, even from the web browser, just whatever I had access to? You can block those things in a firewall, and it's really important that you do that. That forcing encryption on email, again, that happens automatically if you have it set up correctly so that they can't send something out that's sensitive without encryption already being placed upon it. And then another part that is often overlooked is that Microsoft 365, the Google, the G Suite products, they do not have a backup. Those products are designed to do like syncing and sharing of documents. They're not a disaster recovery. They're not a backup within themselves. They'll, if you read their end user license agreement, it states that you need to have a third party backing up your Microsoft 365, especially as we've kind of seen, the Microsoft 365 suite get built out, where we're moving away from servers to a large degree, and we're leveraging, say, SharePoint or Microsoft Teams or OneDrive in order to store data, and what we think is backing up, and it's really not. So that is something that really needs to be taken a look at. I talked about this earlier, where instead of sending the file in the email, it'll actually send a link with an expiration or possibly a password that you would have to have in order to access that link. Just sending them with expirations alone would mitigate your risk greatly, because that would mean that whoever you shared it with would have to have a breach, or somebody getting on their email within, say, a 14-day period. So again, we're just limiting our risk in every which way that we can. One other thing that I think when we talk about data loss prevention is, again, I talked about where are the files at, but also in order to restore them and to recover your operation back to full functionality, you need to have a number of that you could live with, and then you need to check and see if your backup or your disaster recovery plan and actual the components of it meet that requirement. I'll give you an example. Like, there's two different terms whenever we talk about disaster recovery. One is recovery point objective, RPO, recovery point objective, and that's basically how often do you back up? How far back would I have to go in order to get a good file? And if you back up at midnight every night and the backup's successful, that means it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and we start at work at 8. That's the amount of data that's at risk that could have been changed, that I'm going to have to recreate in some way. Some companies would be like, that's perfect. That I could live with that. That wouldn't be too challenging. Whereas other companies like, oh my God, we never could. And I'll make a note too that when systems are down, that is often a huge opportunity for fraud to happen, whether it's intentional or even accidental, like where, like, yeah, I wrote it all down on a notepad and I just didn't put it back in the system so they don't get billed for it. So there's all kind of opportunities for bad stuff to happen when systems are down. And the other one is recovery time objective. And that is, how long would it take to be 100% back up and running in the event that the roof got ripped off the building and our servers got flooded or a water pipe broke? That's actually, believe it or not, one of the most common problems that people have, is that disaster happens, and it's really just water damage from a busted pipe. So those are some things to think about and really put into place. Another thing that I am seeing a huge uptick in people getting cyber liability insurance, which is great. Those forms are getting longer and longer, and you filling out those forms correctly is extremely important, because if you fill them out incorrectly, it could limit or negate your claim. So you want to fill out those forms correctly. And secondly, it affects your rate. So if you don't have particular types of coverage, or what we would call controls, or means by which you're mitigating or lowering your risk by control of something, if you don't have those controls in place, it will cost you more on cyber liability insurance, which is the market has kind of stabilized. It was the Wild West, and it's kind of getting more and more stable, because the cyber liability insurance companies are able, by the people answering these questions, to determine which company is more of a risk, so they can adjust their rates accordingly. I use the auto industry, like the driving, like the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles. If an auto insurance company couldn't look at your DMV record, they would have a very difficult time knowing how much risk that you pose to their company. But with that, they have the ability to look and say, okay, this guy's got a great clean driving record, whatever, so he gets a cheap rate. Or this other company, this other guy's got reckless driving and DUIs, so he's going to get a maybe uninsurable, or maybe a very high rate. So you don't want to miss cyber liability insurance. It is an insurance that is not a luxury, but a necessity in today's world. Want to kind of wrap things up, or kind of bring things to conclusion here. I want to give you a real life example of something that happened to me last year. I did as actually a lunch and learn, where I worked with a company. Even afterwards, I went out and met with them, and they really just they didn't want to. The owner, in all reality, which I know now, she just did not want to spend the money, because she just didn't feel it was that relative or that important. We met a couple times, went over some proposals, tried to craft something that where the risk and reward, we can lower the risk, and with certain controls, and put them in place that would try to help lower risk. And really, there wasn't a lot of controls in place on that particular network. Let's fast forward about, this probably was about 2 years ago. Let's fast forward 18 months. I get a call one day, and they have a attorney with the Office of Civil Rights. In the medical industry, like with HIPAA, it's actually a civil rights violation, the way the law is written. If you lose patient records, you've basically you've offended, or you've inflicted pain upon someone's civil rights if you lose their records. So anyway, she's on a call with this attorney, called me up frantic, and this guy is not being very nice, to put it frankly. He's very much putting pressure on them. They have 10 locations, and demanding an enormous amount of things to happen, like almost immediately, with threat of big fines and all this kind of stuff. And the reality is we got them, but I'm telling you, they spent they probably spent twice the amount of money to do it the way we had to do it. We had no ramp, we had no collection of data. We had to go. And I'll be honest with you, I hate that type of business. Of course, I'm going to help the client. I'm going to do what I can to, get the wolves off of them, protect their patient data. Actually, as a certified information system security professional, I literally had to sign an oath that states that that's what I will do. And of course, that's not, I believe that's the right thing to do, but I don't like business that way. And I tell you guys that story because take advantage of there not being a storm, And I know everybody's busy, I get it, but take advantage of the wolves not being at the door whenever you start to look at things. And I'll refer back to the Center for Internet Security, that those 18 controls. Let's talk. Let's look at the top 6 of those, because if we get those implemented, and I went over basically what they are today, um, and let's get those things in place so that you're going to mitigate 85% of your risk, because chaos will always equal cash, and it's in every industry. It's the world government runs, everything runs that way. It costs a lot more to do it later, and in my professional opinion, um, if you don't have those measures in place within the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to have some type of serious security incident, and probably a security breach. That's not the greatest of news, but if you're facing that, I just I would encourage you to take me up on taking this free, absolutely free business security risk assessment. And I'll even give you some security training where we could, like I talked about earlier, we can assess your people to see how risky they are. Are they going to need um, special treatment, if you will, in order to help protect them, so that you can define who of your employees, like how much risk they're bringing to the table. Maybe you need to limit their access to the data or whatever. You can make decisions based off of information. So I'll kind of end it, and I'll open it up for questions on that. If you would like to take advantage of this free, no hassle, no commitment kind of a assessment, I would love to talk with you and try to help our community get ahead of this onslaught of these bad actors. And I'll say one other thing about why the bad actors are winning. I didn't get one question on why the bad actors are winning. I'm going to tell you why. There's 13 syndicated organizations out there, 13 groups out there that are identified, that are known. I could give you their names. And they are kicking ass because they got a ton of money. They just split up probably the majority of that $8.4 trillion in 2022. That's a lot of money to go around. They can hire a lot of people. And most companies think that their typical IT guy, or their brother-in-law, or I got a guy is my biggest competitor. They don't stand a chance against an organization that is well funded and that shares their wares with each other, their successes. Um, I mean, we just, as even IT guys, they want to make things work. One thing that the IT guy and the business owner have in common is that they both want a network that just is up and running. And the IT guy will turn off security features. They will do all kinds of things um, to make it run. And basically putting the company at a great level of risk. And the business owner may like the guy a lot because, hey, when I was down, he got me back up. But he got me back up by actually introducing an enormous more risk. And in the IT guy's defense, he don't know what he don't know. And for to think that one guy is going to be able to even begin to mount a defense against these huge organizations that are so well funded, it's ludicrous to even get there. So I'll open it up for questions here last few minutes, and if you'd like to talk more, you can send an email requesting a time to meet to security at AskBIS, or you can call that number to go. So, Christy, did you get any questions?
Yes, we had a question come in. How do I know if I've been hacked?
In general, like if somebody was to say, "Hey, I'm scared," like that incident response that I spoke of earlier, there are some tools out there. We use a product called Huntress, and it's actually a ex-CIA guy that he was the IT guy for the CIA, and he developed a software that is very effective, and we would drop that on the network. It's real easy to deploy, and it watches what happens on the network. It uses artificial intelligence and this algorithm that this company has to watch all the things that are happening on the network. That's what I would do immediately if somebody called me and said, hey, there's been something, I don't know what the heck's going on, I'm scared. We drop that on the network. It begins watching all the network connections, watches the entire network. And some people choose to have that added layer of protection. It's a proactive threat hunting is what that's called. That's what I would do day one, minute one, is to, let's see what's happening on that network. And they're using artificial intelligence to, because basically what the bad guys are doing is they can build a bomb on your existing systems where they don't bring in a malicious piece of software that would be caught by the antivirus or by the firewall. They bring in components, and what these tools do is they know the components, and when they see them kind of being formed on a network, then it alerts to say, hey, we have a potential problem here. All right. Anything else?
Yep, we had one more come in. What security training should you provide to your staff?
We use a particular product called Breach Secure Now. It's the one that has that analysis. It does, and we require an annual training that's kind of formal. That's what I'm offering for free in my assessment for your team. That's really all that is required, like by most compliance. Although I do not believe it's enough, but they have to pass a test, 20 question test, and they get a certificate that says that they passed their thing. You put that in your records. It looks great in the event that anything ever happens bad, that you've done your due diligence and you practice due care. But we also do micro trainings. It's a part of every one of our core group meetings within the company every week, and we do a month end or all hands meeting. We have a topic about something that we have seen. We see a lot of things, so we have somebody within the organization bring up something that they have seen within a potential, one of our clients, or something they read that they think would be good. We also do simulated phishing, where we're sending out things via email and check and see who gets caught. They have to wear a little Dory hat. We kind of make it fun, Dory from Finding Nemo. We got some little hats they have to put on and get a picture taken if they ever get caught in a phishing thing. But it's really more of a lifestyle and a culture than, it's not a one and done. But by law, you need to do a one and done for most every organization. All right. Anything else?
That's all the ones we've had come in so far.
All right. All right, guys. Well, again, thank you so much for doing that. If you'd like a copy of this, you can email. We'll be happy to send you a copy. If you'd like to talk more, if you'd like to take me up on that assessment, we could come in and kind of build a baseline, and then I could even do like a technology roadmap. I understand as a business owner, especially depending upon where you are in business, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, but you need to start putting some bricks in the road, or you could be on the wrong side of things. So I appreciate everybody so much. And if you have other questions in the past, please don't hesitate. All right. And we'll let you guys out of here. Thanks again.